This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 76. Welcome to the 76th episode of the Fertility Friday podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Lisa from FertilityFriday.com, and this is your source for information about the fertility awareness method and all things fertility. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, then you already know just how passionate I am about connecting you with the tools and information that you need to improve your menstrual cycle health and fertility. I mean, that's why I started the podcast in the first place, because I strongly believe that every woman has the right to know exactly how her body and her fertility works. And I feel so privileged to be able to share my passion for body literacy and fertility awareness with you every single week. Fertility awareness is so much more than just birth control or trying to get pregnant, because it truly gives you a window into your own health and fertility. And I love sharing my expertise with my clients and helping them to understand their charts and to connect with their cycles. So if you've recently discovered fertility awareness, but you're not feeling quite so confident about using it for birth control just yet, or if you've been charting for a while and you're finding that your cycles are all over the place and you can't really figure out what's happening with your mucus or your cervix, or the random bleeding that you keep having, I can help with that. Get started today with a free 15-minute consultation with me by heading over to fertilityfriday.com/coaching, or just click the work with me button on my website. I can't wait to delve in with you and get started. I would also like to invite you to sign up for the Fertility Friday newsletter. So head over to fertilityfriday.com/ebook, and as a gift to you, you'll receive a free copy of my new ebook, where I reveal what to expect when coming off of hormonal contraceptives, and I share 5 steps to restoring healthy menstrual cycles post-pill. And in today's show, I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Aimee Raupp. Aimee is the author of Chill Out and Get Healthy, as well as Yes, You Can Get Pregnant, Natural Ways to Improve Your Fertility Now and into Your 40s. She holds a Master of Science degree in Traditional Oriental Medicine from the Pacific College of Oriental Medicine in San Diego, as well as a bachelor's degree in biology from Rutgers University. So Aimee is a licensed acupuncturist and herbalist, and she incorporates her background in Western science with principles of traditional Oriental medicine, which creates a unique, effective approach to help her clients reconnect to the presence of their optimal health. And so in addition to helping thousands of women, Aimee herself recently and naturally became pregnant. So Aimee, congratulations. I know you have a little one at home. And she did this following her own advice. And her mission through her teachings is to educate and inspire women, improve their health, celebrate their beauty, and prevent disease, as well as increase their fertility. So in today's show, we're going to be talking about fertility. We're going to be talking about the emotional aspects of fertility and why that's so important, as well as the relationship between age and fertility, and lots of other topics. So thank you so much for being here, Aimee.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Well, for the listeners that maybe haven't heard of you or haven't had an opportunity to read your book, maybe you could just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what drew you into this field.
So, as you said, I'm an acupuncturist by trade. I've been practicing for 11 years. I have written 2 books. I'm working on the 3rd one right now. And I got into Chinese medicine, which acupuncture is just one branch of Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine is acupuncture, Chinese herbs, nutrition, lifestyle, all focused from an Eastern holistic perspective. But I was en route to medical school after finishing my biology degree. I was doing a master's degree in neuroscience, and just a little frustrated, I suppose, with how the Western medical model looked at disease. And I guess innately, I always had a very holistic viewpoint of illness and disease, and didn't really quite realize it until I was in the throes of doing academic research and focusing specifically on, I was researching Alzheimer's disease. So we were looking at very specific cells in the brain and how that was causing Alzheimer's. And I remember one day, sitting with my mentor and saying, but what about the person's diet or their stress level? Don't you think that attributes something to disease state? And anyway, that led, him and I down a path. And he talked to me, my mentor out at UCSD talked to me about Chinese medicine and how, fascinating it was. And he gave me a book called The Web That Has No Weaver, which was written by Ted Kapchuk, who teaches about Chinese medicine up at Harvard. And that just turned me on to a whole different path of medicine. And, I never looked back. I left UCSD and I went into the program at PCOM, Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. And it just spoke to me in a way that Western medicine never did. It's almost simple, but we're more like detectives to get to the root of the cause of the illness, and then also to look at disease as this very broad based, from a broad based spectrum perspective, and that it's not just, that you have a disease. It's kind of what caused it and what are the other factors that either brought it on or exacerbating it. And we always look at the emotional component to disease, which I think is severely overlooked in the Western medical model. And so through all of those, teachings, I've thrived as a practitioner, and I love doing what I do, and I love helping all of my patients. And fertility is sort of started coming to me. And I think because of my scientific perspective, there was a very measured end result, right? The woman was either pregnant or not. And so that worked for me. And, now I've been at this 11 years, and I think my baby counter on my website is just about 400. And that comes out to be about 3 live births a month for the last 11 years, which is phenomenal. Wow. And then through my book, I've helped thousands more women, improve their fertility. And so I've worked with so many women and their partners to optimize their health and their fertility.
Well, I feel like from a Western medical perspective, illness is kind of seen in a kind of a mysterious way. I don't know if that's the right way to look at it, but it's like it just comes out of nowhere for no reason.
Right.
Or it's due to genetic reasons, basically all of the reasons that are outside of our control. Exactly. And then when it comes to fertility, for some reason, it's like the woman is compartmentalized and her fertility is seen as like just, I don't know, like as if you added a box onto her or something, as if it's not part of her. So maybe you could talk a little bit about your philosophy around fertility, health, how those two things are related, and what women really need to know about their fertility and their health.
Well, that they're not separate. My biggest mission is to educate women that their fertility is an extension of their health. So our goal is to optimize their health, and from that space, fertility will thrive. The reigning theme throughout my book, Yes, You Can Get Pregnant, is I have the power to change my health and improve my fertility. And so to teach women that, and we're not just talking about health from a physical perspective, right? We're talking about one from an emotional perspective as well. So when we really work on the parameters of nutrition, of physical health, emotional health, we can shift their overall health picture, and from that, fertility thrives. So we don't really have these measurements, if you will, to see how fertility is shifting. What I usually use as those measurements is, okay, is your digestion better? Are you having healthy bowel movements every day? Are you getting more restful sleep? Is your eczema going away? Do you, whatever chronic condition you might have, is that getting better? Those are my guideposts, if you will, to see that the health is shifting. And so therefore fertility must be then improving, because a woman who's having challenges getting pregnant, it's because her body is saying, I don't have the resources for that right now. I still have like bigger fish to fry, if you will. You're ill, or you have this chronic disease that hasn't been rectified, or you're eating very poor quality food and you're not giving your cells enough nutrition to thrive. And so I can't get pregnant with this. These are not good resources for me. And we have to use that then as our foundation. And from there, make the shifts. And, I always work with diet. I work with lifestyle. And then the emotional perspective too, because the stress levels that we put ourselves under really age us prematurely and compromise the health of our cells and the integrity of how our body functions. And again, our fertility just shuts down. The body just says, I can't do this with what you're giving me. So we have to make these shifts. And So that's really how I work, and that's how I see it. They are so not separate. Whereas the Western medical model, you go to a fertility doctor, you're as good as your FSH and your AMH, and that's about it. Maybe your antral follicle count. No one even talks to a woman about cervical mucus or ovulation or how is her sex life, or what is the reason that she wants to have a baby? Is she trying to fill a void emotionally in her marriage? Is she unhappy in her life and a baby will make her happier? Is she trying to fix, poor parenting that her parents did? There's so many layers, I think, to this fertility puzzle. And I don't use the word infertility, by the way. I think it's an extremely negative word. So the first chapter in my book is all about removing that word from our language, because I do believe that our thoughts and the words that we use have a very big impact on our reality, if you will, and how we choose to see our bodies. So if we believe our body is infertile, that's basically saying that it's broken, and we're giving our body that message every time we talk about it. We're saying, well, you're broken anyway, so I don't really believe in you, nor in your ability to get pregnant. And so you further shut down the process. So if you'll notice, I'll use the words fertility challenge. I'll say, your fertility needs a little rejuvenation, but I never use the word infertility, except for right now when I explain why I don't use it.
Well, I think I might have even used this example on a separate podcast as well. But so at the time of this recording, I've just released my interview with Dr. Thomas Cowan. And I love the way he was talking about fertility in terms of overall health. He's like, if you went to the doctor and said, and of course I'm paraphrasing here, and said, I can't have a bowel movement, that would be a problem. And everyone would know that's a problem. And he compared that to fertility, whereas it's just not seen the same way.
Funny. I use that all the time. I use it all the time because I say, like, we have to find what I call the red flags. Like, okay, so what is not working right now in your body? And also use that, the bowel movement analogy is great in the sense of, I always say this to my coaching clients. Okay, you're not pooping, right? And so you don't actually shut down and all of a sudden say, well, that's it. My large intestine doesn't work anymore. I'm never going to poop again. Like, that's it. I'm broken. It doesn't work. Like, it's going to have to figure out another way, or I'm just never going to poop again. You never say that. You never just decide it's broken and it's never going to work again. But with your fertility, you seem to do that, right? Oh, I'm infertile. It's never going to work again. And it's the same thing. It's on a spectrum. You might just be a little constipated right now, and so you just need to do X, Y, and Z, and then your bowels will start moving again. And it's the same thing with fertility. You might just be on like the low fertility spectrum, the end of the fertility spectrum, and you can easily creep your way back up to the middle or the high point. You just have to treat your body right. You just have to make these shifts. And it's true, like the Western medical model doesn't say that. It's very concrete. It's, oh, you're over 35 and so your eggs are all bad, or you have endometriosis and so you'll never get pregnant. There's just these very concrete, definitive reasons, or there's very, obscure, like unexplained infertility reasons, and we just don't understand why you're not getting pregnant. And that we have to step back and look. And, in Chinese medicine, we see it as, we don't even separate, the ovaries from, there's no such thing as ovaries or fallopian tubes in Chinese medicine. We just call it the female reproductive system, right? And the uterus is the main part of that. And the term we use for the uterus is the child's palace. That's actually the Chinese translation for uterus. The term is Zhigong in Chinese, and when you translate that, it means child's palace. And so I try to teach my clients that we want to focus on improving the health of this palace, right? This is a palace. Your body is a temple, and your uterus is your child's palace. And so what kind of palace would you want your child to live in, right? Do you want one with genetically modified foods and pesticide-ridden bath and beauty products and hateful thoughts and, all of these things? Or do you want a palace that's like lush and green and, filled with all this yummy organic food and healthy products and healthy thoughts? And, there's this way that we really need to shift our thinking, and that the fertility is no separate than the rest of our health.
Well, I love that. And I feel like the world would be totally different if we actually called the uterus a child's palace.
I agree.
Because it brings it, right? Like it brings it into what it really is and how integral and important. But on a little bit of a tangent that I'm not going to go too far down. As women, we're told that our periods are dirty, and there's this
Yeah.
whole
Oh, terrible.
concept of our reproductive system just being gross.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of that lends itself to only really thinking of using it during the childbearing years, right? So it's totally irrelevant until you want to have a baby, and then we just try to like get it running or whatever, and then afterwards it's totally relevant again.
Right.
So I just love your philosophy around it, and obviously the philosophy of traditional Chinese medicine as well, but as it being part of ourselves and not separate, and also not just part of our physical body in the physical realm, but also part of our emotional selves. Now, like what we're talking about here in terms of how Western medicine is viewing the body, and how you mentioned something along the lines of like the doctor's looking for your TSH level and really reducing your whole, for like that whole aspect of yourself to 2 tests. And I feel as though there's no wonder that women would, I mean, it's just because of the way our system views it. So no wonder women would feel the same way and think that it's either broken or not.
Right.
Or even the thought of doing, it's always like, you know, even if diet doesn't come to play, supplements. So a lot of women will have heard, okay, if I just take this thing.
CoQ10, right.
Yeah. So if I take CoQ10, or if I take, I don't know, there's 1,000 things like bee pollen or something, or royal jelly is the thing I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So if I just take that, then everything will be fine. Because we also have this really kind of minimized view of our body as if
Separatists. Yeah.
yeah. So, but then we're looking for the quick fix. Obviously, if you make dietary changes and try to improve your gut health, this is not something that's going to happen over 2 weeks.
No. Well, even when I got, my Yes You Can Get Pregnant book deal, this is a little backstory. They wanted me to include something in the title about like the 3-month protocol to getting pregnant faster, and I can be a very stubborn individual, especially when it comes to what I believe in. And I said, no, absolutely not. Then I won't write the book, because that is not my approach. My approach is a lifestyle change. You have to change your lifestyle. And, what I always say is, I want you to be the healthiest you can be, so that when you get pregnant with a very healthy child. You have a very healthy pregnancy, and then you bring that baby home into a happy, healthy home. And this is a lifestyle that you're going to make now, preconception, to then get pregnant, and then you're going to follow it through your pregnancy, and then you're going to do it the rest of your life. Like, that's how I see it happening. And of course, there are, the 80-20 rule, if you will, or the 90-10 rule, where we get to live our life and we want to be practical. So, there's times when I'm not going to always be eating grass-fed organic meat, because maybe I'm in a place where they don't have that as an option. And I don't think eating that once in a while is going to end my life, or using toxic deodorant once in a while if I, have some big event and I don't want to smell or sweat through, because the organic deodorant doesn't really work as well. Do you know what I mean? So there's some kind of relativity to this, but that this needs to be a lifestyle. This is not a 3-month plan. This is not take DHEA for 3 months and improve the quality of your eggs. No, this is, and of course I see the same thing, and this is about your body's basically saying to you, I don't have the resources to procreate right now, because what you're giving me doesn't work to make another life. And so you have to step back and look at it like that. So if I start giving it better resources, and as a function of that, my health improves and I start to feel better and look better, and I can fight the aging process of my cells, like to understand that there's a very, very, very big difference between our chronological age, which means the years old we are, and our physiological age, which means the years old our cells are, and that how you live your life influences that. Mm-hmm. And then your fertility is a function of that, that it's all the same. And, the field of epigenetics really hones this in, that, we used to think that our genetics were set in stone. What mom and dad gave us is what we have. And so if dad had high cholesterol, you're probably going to get it. Or mom had miscarriages, you might have them. None of that is true anymore. Science is completely changed. The Western medical world has completely changed its viewpoint on that. And now there's the science of epigenetics that shows how we live our lives basically influences our genes and whether they turn on or turn off. And so, sure, you could get high cholesterol or diabetes like dad had if you kind of live the exact same way as him, right? But you could also never get those diseases because you've manipulated your genetic template, if you will, in a positive way. And that emotions play a very similar role in all that too. But what the beauty in all this is, there is a reason for my tangent, is that Chinese medicine always saw it that way. We always said that how you live your life affects your health. And so, and whether diseases come up or don't, it wasn't that like, your template is set in stone and, just because this disease was in your family that you're destined to get it. It's actually the total opposite. You could actually fight it. And you can also fight the aging process. You can also, improve the quality of your health over the years. Like your health doesn't have to decline as you age. So your fertility does not have to decline as you age, and that all of this is about lifestyle, though. It's not about, again, like this 3-month plan.
Well, I want to delve into some of the emotional aspects because I think that with our current Western medical model, there's always this push to have every single possible thing, proved in a scientific way. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, but I think that it limits us. It actually separates us from common sense, I think, in a lot of situations. Because then, well, why am I going to do this if there's no scientific research? Well, if your acupuncturist tells you that you need to get, more sleep or you need to reduce your stress. Yes, there's tons of science to show that anyways. Right. But when it comes to the emotional aspects, maybe you could talk to the person who's a little bit skeptical and is like, you know what, I'm totally cool with taking the supplements I need to take, making the dietary changes that I need to make. But when you start talking about how, like, if I think this way or if I have these thoughts, it's going to impact my fertility, I check out because I'm just like, I don't, how could that possibly have an impact on my fertility?
Right.
So that's a good segue to talking about the emotional aspects.
Well, so I'll start here. So go back to that child's palace, right? The uterus. And the way we see in Chinese medicine, the anatomy of our uterus, right? That there's a direct line of connection between the heart and the uterus or the child's palace. And so we actually see this tube, if you will, that's the best way to look at it, or a vessel that connects the heart to the uterus. And every organ has an emotional component in Chinese medicine. The heart thrives when there's a lot of joy or, even self-love, I think is the best way to put it. And since we're in the self-love, time, which is nice, everybody's talking about it. But so if we have a lot of joy and love in our heart and in our daily lives, basically, so a lot of appreciation and gratitude and just general happiness about life right now, that love and joy actually transmits from the heart into the uterus. And we see it as it makes the uterus even more hospitable. So the whole goal is to improve the hospitality, if you will, of the uterus. We want to make that a really lovely little child's palace for someone to want to cozy up in and live in for 10 months. And a lot of women can start to wrap their head around that. They'll say, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, this person has to live inside of my body. And so it better be on the cleaner side, right? We could at least all go there. But then the emotional cleanliness of our life is also very important in that, and there is science now to support it, that if we think happier thoughts, our cells actually function better. If we think unhappy thoughts or negative thoughts, it slows down the metabolic processes in the body. I mean, there is science there. There's also a lot of research that they've done on like meditation and the joy. They followed this group of monks for a while, and they saw, that disease states like blood pressure or cholesterol or diabetes, all of these things would actually improve with just happy thoughts. But if we just kind of step back and think about, if you're having an internal dialogue with yourself on a regular basis, which is, I think we think about 60,000 thoughts a day. So if the bulk of those thoughts are self-deprecating or not very nice, it is this form of your body attacking itself. And so without going into it too much, there's this autoimmune component. And basically by autoimmune, we mean that the body is attacking its own tissues, even though they shouldn't be considered foreign. The body's considering it foreign and attacking it. And that plays a big role in all these undiagnosed fertility challenges. And I go into it a lot in the book, but for the purpose of this conversation, it's just then to step back one degree further and look at it from an emotional perspective. If you're attacking yourself every day or on a very regular basis, that's also setting the body up for failure, because it's becoming a very hostile environment, and it's not very open and receptive to another life living and growing in it. And even when you do get pregnant, to be conscious of those thoughts, because that does impact the baby's energy, if you will, or the baby's ability to come out and hopefully think happy, positive thoughts about themselves. So, in Chinese medicine, we see the emotional component as one of the biggest pieces to the puzzle. And I'll see it a lot too. Like, for example, miscarriage is it happens. It's like 20% of women will have miscarriages for no reason at all, if you will, and never go on to have another one, but it's common. And what you'll see is that the woman easily got pregnant, right? Maybe she went off the pill and she got pregnant right away and she miscarried. And now I would go into that she probably miscarried because the reproductive system wasn't in its prime condition, right? She had just gone off the pill, so she probably needed more time to prime her body before getting pregnant. But either way, she had the miscarriage. Now she's so afraid of having another miscarriage. There's so much fear in her, and probably a lot of trauma and sorrow over the loss, that she's actually shut down her body. She's actually, like, the line of communication between the heart and the uterus is shut down because it's overwhelmed by fear or sorrow. And so until you get that woman, and I've seen this in 11 years of practice, until you get that woman to make amends with her body, to forgive her body for the miscarriage, to start to believe in her body again and its ability to get pregnant and stay pregnant, she probably won't get pregnant again. And it'll come out, it'll eventually, like, my clinic is like a therapy session basically too. It's not just acupuncture. We do a lot of emotional work, but it'll come up that the woman has lost faith in her body. And I guarantee you, across the board, any woman who's trying to get pregnant starts to lose faith in their bodies. And so then they start to have these negative, self-deprecating thoughts. And that further, whether it's the chicken or the egg, if you will, that further limits their body's ability to get pregnant. So one of the things I always do, I do coaching, and it's 4 parts, and I dedicate the first session and the last session to the emotional component, and have women change the conversation in their head when they start to think, negative thoughts about their body or its inability to get pregnant, or even just about their relationships, what they think when they look in the mirror, that we just start to find things that we like about ourselves, things that are working in our body, things that bring us joy. One of my clients started taking piano lessons again because it was something that made her happy. And what happens in the world of fertility is most women put their lives on hold until they get pregnant. And that creates a lot of resentment and anger. Then it affects their sex life because they're probably on some level pissed off at their partner that it's not happening. Maybe we're not having sex at all the right times. And, then the partner is having performance issues. I mean, the whole thing, it just gets really, really messy from an emotional perspective. So until we start to work on loving ourselves and believing that our body can get pregnant, and even getting back to this space of knowing in your heart that you will have children, that's one thing I always ask women, like, all this aside, do you believe that you're going to have a baby? And almost every single one of them over the 11 years has said yes, And so that, to me, I say, okay, that's what we go back to. Let's always go back to that. That you're going to. So between point A and point B is a little unclear, but we're going to get there, So to get back to that belief and that faith, and to start to live their life from that more confident place again, and then to not put their life on hold, and not put so much pressure on their home life and their relationship, and, also get to the root of, why do I want to be a mother? Is it to add more joy to my life, or is it because I don't have any joy in my life right now and I think the baby will save me? There's a lot of that goes on, especially in our society. And then there's also pressure. Am I doing this because someone else thinks I should be having kids right now and I really want to do X? So there's all of that I do a lot of that work with my clients, and it's amazing the transformations that happen. I talk a lot about giving birth to something, maybe not necessarily a baby right now, to transform your life, give birth to better health, and whether you believe that your thoughts create your reality, I don't really care. What's more important is that you, yes, some liver pills, a little bit of liver. So a little sidetrack. My nanny just came in, and there's a little something in my son's breast milk. I put some freeze-dried liver, because liver is such an important nutrient-dense food for fertility and for health. And my son at 6 months is already getting liver. So sorry about that. But
Oh, my son gets liver too.
yeah, and bone broth, and he's going to start on some fermented foods, and he takes probiotics and all that stuff, and cod liver oil. But anyway, the importance of realizing that, again, we can go back to this, that our health is a function of really, I use this quote all the time, so I'll just sum it up with this. Our thoughts create our behavior, and our behavior dictates our health. And so whether you believe your thoughts create your reality, so thinking negative thoughts makes for a negative reality or not, that's fine. But if you have constant self-deprecating thoughts, that dictates your behavior. And then your behavior dictates your health and your fertility. So if you think about it from that place, if you get to this root of, I love myself and I want to feel better, I want to look better every day, I want to have more joy in my life, then you start to say, well, I actually think making homemade dinner versus ordering in is probably, just feels better to me, and I feel better when I don't eat gluten, or, my skin looks better when I cut out sugar, or when I meditate, I just seem to have a better day. If you start to tune in that perspective and realize that, your thoughts then dictate your behavior dictates your health and your fertility, that then you could at least meet me there and agree that we, our emotions play a very big role in how we treat our bodies and therefore our health and our fertility.
Well, one of the studies I've heard about, haven't had an opportunity to read it firsthand, scientists who studied crystal formation in water, and I'm sure you've heard of that.
Those studies. Yeah.
So it's interesting for the science-minded folks that think, oh, well, how could this make a difference? Like if you actually talk to water, yes, I said it. So if you talk to water in a negative way, the water forms a crystal pattern that looks totally different than if you talk to water in a loving way. And that sounds like crazy, right? Based on our scientifically minded world that we live in, but it's actually a thing. And I'll see if I can find the study and link it in the show notes.
There's another study, and I'll email it to you. Well, I have to find it, but Deepak Chopra recently was talking, and he said that they took cells from a person, right? And then they put the cells in like a petri dish, so it was your own cells, and they put you in a room like 2 doors down. So you weren't even in the same room as your own cells. And they had them think either positive thoughts about their life or their body or just happy thoughts in general, or they had them talk about like negative, stressful things or things that they disliked. And the cells, either with the positive, happy thoughts 3 doors down, became like healthier. So they measured mitochondrial function, which is the powerhouse of the cell, which is, if you guys all know about taking CoQ10 because it improves your fertility, the reason is because CoQ10 actually improves the function of the mitochondria, which improves the function of your cells, which therefore improves your fertility. And that means every cell in your body, not just the cells in your ovaries. So just a little aside. Positive thoughts improved mitochondrial function. Negative thoughts actually shut it down. So the cells started dying. So think about that. Like that is profound. That is such a big deal. And so when it comes to especially creating another life, like, yes, it's a gift that we were given. And I want every single woman who wants to exercise it to exercise it. That is my number one goal in life, but you have to believe that you have that gift, but also believe that we want you to procreate. The higher powers would like you to procreate from a place of optimal health so that you can bring in a healthier child, and kind of improve the quality of this world, if you will. This isn't a very, what is the word I'm blanking, but getting pregnant is a lot more profound than I think we give it credit for.
Yeah.
And,
Well, because we're creating a human being. And I think that
yes.
that whole concept is lost. And I think what we're talking about in terms of how our emotional state impacts our health, like somehow we were disconnected from that. As a kid, these things.
Yes.
If you've ever had a pet or you have a friend who has a pet, like talk really mean to your dog and then talk really nice to your dog and see how they react differently. So it's really common sense. Like we're having this.
Talk to your friends.
Exactly.
I always say,
talk to yourself.
Tune into your conversation. Would you talk to your best friend that way? Because you probably wouldn't. And if you wouldn't, then you better not be doing it to yourself. And also, like, this is another pet peeve of mine. I want to create a whole herd of women that really love themselves and then get pregnant and then parent from that place, because if we parent from a place of self-love, we do a lot less of the guilt and the blame and the shame on our children, which I think sets our children up for not such for challenges in their life. And so if we love ourselves and are secure in that and secure in our relationships, and then we bring children into this world, we make for a better baby.
See, the only thing that I like when we have conversations like this, and even not even only in terms of emotional aspect, but also like dietary and exposure to chemicals, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit. I feel like a lot of women hear it and they think, okay, well then it's all my fault. So you're saying that it's because of me that I can't get pregnant. It's because I'm so toxic that my body is not allowing myself to, like, toxic literally in the physical sense, because I'm exposing to all these chemicals. And then you're telling me that my thoughts are toxic too. So basically I'm just poisoning myself and preventing. But I think that, that's a reaction. I think that you might want to sit with that for a minute and think about why that's coming up for you. But it's absolutely, we're not saying it's your fault. This is the world we live in, and we're all connected. You can't turn on the television without seeing a perfect Princess Barbie woman thing that doesn't even look like a real human. We're bombarded with these messages, and when you go to the doctor and you have, I don't know if, I'm sure many of the listeners and maybe even you, Aimee, have had this experience where you go to a doctor and you genuinely have a concern, like about your whole body, right? You don't feel good and you think to yourself, okay, this issue I'm having with my period isn't normal. And you go to the doctor and you say something about it. And you say, I'm having a lot of pain or whatever. And intuitively, you know that it's wrong. You shouldn't be having pain, or you shouldn't be having like a period every 6 months or whatever. And instead of the doctor hearing you and saying, well, let's talk about your lifestyle and your health and your diet and see what's really happening, the doctor says, oh, well, that's fine. You just need to take this pill. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a Midol, pain relieving pill, or whether it's a hormonal birth control pill or whatever. And all of our intuitive kind of senses in terms of our body and our health are shut down systematically by this world that we live in. So I don't think the message that any woman listening should be hearing is, this is your fault. I think the message you should be hearing is just let's look at our body. What we're saying is that you're not just an ovary that has low DHEA or whatever. You are a whole human being, a whole woman, and you have a spiritual aspect, a physical aspect, and an emotional aspect. You don't have to like it, but they're still there.
Right.
And they all play a role. And if that sounds uncomfortable for you, it feels uncomfortable, I think, for a lot of us, because it's so far from the current paradigm and what we're taught. Yeah.
And I just, this conversation comes up a lot in the clinic, and of course, even in any of my teachings, online or whatever, but it's, again, of course, that it's not your fault, but to get back to this place of believing in your body again and taking back the control and the power. And like, that's kind of how I come at it is, no, I don't think you've screwed it up. Like, I think you can improve upon things. But I want you to feel empowered to do so. I want you to feel like, this isn't all just up to your doctor and the pills that you have to take, right? To reconnect to your body and your health and believe in its ability to thrive again. And, I had a patient the other day who is now pregnant. And so we've gone through, treating her for fertility, and she got pregnant and things are going great. And she's been eating like more sugar than normal. Right. And she's chronically hard on herself. And as most of us are, myself included. And that's probably why this work speaks to me, because I did a lot of work on myself. And I feel like there's so much I want to share now with people, right? I had an eating disorder when I was younger. And, like, I mean, you name it, I was hard on myself. But so anyway, she was being hard on herself, and she was convinced that, maybe she's doing harm to her child. And I said, listen, there's a lot of people out there that eat sugar in their pregnancy that, that don't follow a diet that I would prescribe. What we're doing here is basically like the cherry on top. It's like the icing. It's like the extra special sauce, to make for an even better and even healthier baby. Because, people say to me all the time, well, crack addicts get pregnant and they're not really focused on joy, and they're not really, and it's a great point. And they're not eating organic, Aimee, and I say, to that, my response is yes, but I would really question the quality of that child and that child's ability to then go on and procreate, and also the, how we're adding to society, if you will, if I want to get very esoteric about it. But it's true. These people do get pregnant, and do all of these things need to be 100% in check? No. But if you are having challenges with getting pregnant, this is stuff I want you to look at, and the emotional component plays a big role. And it might not have been an issue if you, I don't like the word issue, but there might not have been such a big challenge for you in the self-love department until you started struggling with getting pregnant. And now you're beating yourself up every day. And now you're really focused on, the supplements and the skincare and all these things. And I also want to check that, because what I say is I want you to do this from a place of self-love, not from a place of desperation, which is a really fine line when we're trying to get pregnant, because all we want to do is have that baby. Mm-hmm. But to start to realize that you're doing this to improve your health, and your fertility is a function of your health, and to get back to that place of being kind to yourself and listening to yourself, and not just checking out and handing the power over to somebody else. That's really the message here, is to take back the power, and the power, feeling empowered and living a life from an empowered place is rooted in self-love. And so I wish that for every woman, because we could all use that. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think there's a real practical application to this, in the sense that, I don't get the sense from you that you're saying that we should write down some affirmations and wake up in the morning and be like, I feel great, I feel good. Like, right. It's not what this is, in my experience as well. And I think for many women, if you feel kind of crappy about yourself all the time, and you don't have a lot of good things to say about yourself, like, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm so terrible, I can't even, whatever you're beating yourself up about today, like, oh, I can't even, eat properly, and oh my goodness, I had sugar. Like, if you're always in that state, do you really have the energy you need to be the best that you can be? You know what I mean? Like, So if a client is working with you, I know we talked a little bit about this before we started recording. So if I'm your client, you're telling me, not telling me, but you're working with me and encouraging me to make a lot of changes in my life. Right? Yes. Maybe certain things that I haven't done for years, like, yes. Eat right, and do some moderate exercise, and, get to bed on time, and then even delving deeper, asking me questions about what my relationship is like with my partner, and if I'm happy in my life. And right. You get pretty deep with your clients. Yes. If you are not sitting around, but if you have the predominant kind of thought process in your head about how, I don't look very good today, and I'm so fat, I need to lose X number. Like, if this is the conversation that's going on in your head all the time, how could you even have the energy to
be a mom?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, and that's not to say that you can't, but I think I really liked kind of what you talked about in terms of, like, it's not to say that you have to be perfect. I think there's too much pressure on women to be perfect. No. But I think, so I don't watch a lot of TV. It's there's actually kind of a running joke between my husband and I. Like, I really like those DIY shows. And so before we don't have the cable right now. But when we did have the cable, I would watch those DIY shows all the time. And it's just a random example, but I'm getting to a point. but you watch these shows and, it really makes you go into your own kitchen and you start seeing everything that's wrong, right? You start to see all the little stuff. So I'm at my mother-in-law's house this weekend and we watch the DIY shows on the TV and I can't even help myself. Like, it's like I'm an addict, which is why we don't have the cable. And so the DIY show's on and it was so funny. So this woman is on the show and she has this beautiful house. Honestly, you go in, the cameras go into her house and it was beautiful, beautiful home, lovely. And so my first thought was, what do you need done here?
Right.
Okay. And then the cameras go in and, I get it. We all have different styles and preferences. I'm not judgy here. Great. She wants to do her home. But one of the points I wanted to make is that we put in a lot of emotional effort to pretty up our houses and to if anyone's ever gotten married, good Lord, the amount of hours that you put in to this wedding planning and making everything perfect and choosing all the colors. And we do a lot of that in terms of like when, baby's coming, preparing the perfect room and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we're willing to do all of that kind of stuff, then ultimately, like, we shouldn't be so offended if somebody suggests to us that maybe we should take a little bit of a minute and look inside of ourselves and see if we could clean up our thoughts a little bit to make our bodies, the literal home to our baby before they're born, a little bit more hospitable. So I'm going to get off the soapbox, but I think that's so interesting, right? Because we're so willing to really delve into all those little details in other areas of our lives.
Well, and that's it. It's the deeper introspection which is really needed here, and not even just from the emotional perspective, but from, say, the food perspective. Like, what are you eating? Like Deepak has a book. I think it's oh gosh, why am I blanking? But basically about like, are we eating to fill the void or are we eating for nutrition? And my big thing is eat for vitality. So. What are we eating for and what are we choosing to eat? And when we start to see our body as a palace and then our uterus as our child's palace, I think then we inherently just make even better food choices, not just choices with our thoughts, right? And inherently we just, and listen, there's another thing too, is like, you can't be happy all the time. That's really, really, really unrealistic. And I would be concerned if someone came to me and they were just like, I'm happy all the time. Like, I would then think they were maybe manic or, like, again, not being judgy, but that would concern me as well. So it's a relative balance. But if you could just get to this is what my teacher says to me, and it helps so much. If we could get to a place where 55 or 60% of the time we were thinking happier, more positive, more kind, self-loving thoughts, that would be enough. So I'm not talking even 80 or 90% of the time, like 55, 60% of the time. And from there, you'll see it'll start to creep up and up and up, which is great. And then you'll start to be very conscious when the not so good feeling thoughts come up, or when the desire to, eat the whole container of ice cream comes up because you had a shitty day, excuse my language, and that's okay. Sometimes I eat the whole container of ice cream, and I don't think it's going to affect my fertility for the rest of my life or my next child. But it's, if you're doing that on a regular basis is what we need to fix, and work through and look into, because we spend a lot of time prettying up the outside and we don't really pay attention to the inside, and it's really important here to pay attention to the inside.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you can't necessarily have one without the other. I mean, you can't improve your emotional state and try to kind of get a handle on those, automatic negative thought processes, and then just still be, like, when you do that, you find improvements in other areas just because you're one whole human being. So you can't just like feel really good and feel better. That's going to trickle into your motivation to, maybe try some different types of food or maybe do some exercise. But in terms of making this a bit practical then for the listeners who are thinking, okay, this is great, but it's easier said than done. It is not easy to just change your thought patterns. I'm assuming that most of the women, listening to the show are adults. And so as adults, we've had years of practice, solidifying these thought patterns of ours. So if you wake up every day, look in the mirror and, criticize yourself, that's something you've been doing for years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you're just going to wake up one day and all of a sudden everything's going to be great. Like this is a process. So I can share, like for me personally, one of the things that has made a huge difference in terms of my like thought patterns is actually spending time every day, even if it's just a minute. Sometimes I write it down, sometimes I don't, about thinking of the things that I'm actually grateful for and happy about.
Mm-hmm.
And you can put those into categories, right? You can, your personal life, what are you thankful about with regards to your partner or your children or your friends or your
Mm-hmm.
work? And force yourself, even if you're mad at them or even if you're having a bad
Right.
day, because that's when it really counts, right? But force yourself to think about one or two or three things that you love about whatever. And even if it's your
Yes.
body,
Mm-hmm.
um, you could do that to anything that you tend to be critical. So you listening, you know what you're critical about. You know what it is. So if it's your body, then you have to find something about your body that you love. And even if it's just your, I don't know, what could I say? Something, I don't know, if there's just something. Maybe you have dimples and you love them.
Right. Or like my eyebrows, like things like that. I always say, but if you will, I have a little 5-step process that I always share with all my coaching clients, which I think can be helpful, for this practicality aspect. Um, and it's, the number one is to be quiet. So every day find some time for stillness. And I'm not talking about, again, this is the whole moderation thing. We're not talking that you have to meditate 20 minutes twice a day. That's unrealistic even for me and, for most of us. But even if it's just 2 minutes a day where you just kind of sit, and I just call it like chill out and check in time, where you just check in with yourself. How am I feeling? How does my digestion feel? Like, is my heart racing? Do I have a headache? Do I feel happy? Do I feel sad? And a mantra that I like to remind people of is, in when I'm quiet, I can hear my true self speak. So to tune in, to find the quiet. Then the next part is to listen. So when you're quiet, you can truly hear. And so listen to the conversation you're having with yourself, right? Listen to your body and what it's telling you. Tune into that gut intuition, which is what I'm asking women to do when I say, do you really believe that you're going to have this child? That most all of them can quiet themselves enough to find the answer, and it's yes. It might be a really quiet yes, or it might be a really loud yes, but that listen, and trust. And then to start changing the conversation. So the first one is be quiet. The next one is to listen. The number three is to change the conversation. And so that's going in and hearing those thoughts or conversations that you have with yourself or with others, and just kind of shifting the way you state things, and do it in a way that's kinder to yourself, right? Um, and a mantra that I always love is I love and accept myself. All is okay, and it's only going to get better, And so to just say something nice to yourself, even, if I hear myself say something really, kind of rude to myself in my head, I'll stop and I'm like, Aim, you're doing the best you can do right now, so just take a deep breath. And it's okay, and that's it. Like, so I'm not saying, oh, Aimee, I love you. Like, it's not coming from this false place. If right now I'm not in a total state of self-love, but I could at least say to myself, hey, ease up. You're doing the best you can do right now. You're trying, and I give you credit for that. Um, and then, of course, as Lisa was saying too, to practice gratitude, find things that you love in your life right now, the simple things like I had a good night's sleep, or, I'm grateful for Lisa and these podcasts she puts on. Like you can be very general, you could be really deep and profound, but just find some things every day that you appreciate and have gratitude for. And then the last is embracing where you are or surrendering, and so we spend most of our lives, whether it's trying to get pregnant or not, but wanting to be somewhere other than where we are. We're always the grass is always greener, right? But I think when we step back and just say, like, okay, I'm here, and I'm hoping to get there, and I'm on my path, and I know I can get over there, and just embrace it a little bit and stop fighting it constantly, because that fight, that battle creates a lot of stress and resistance in our life, and that can impact our health and our fertility.
Mm-hmm.
So it really, just comes back to this finding the quiet time, listening, being kind to ourselves, and finding things right here, right now that you appreciate. I always say, don't wait to be happy when, we want to find things to be happy about now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you're listening to this and it's resonating with you, and depending on how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go,
Yeah.
one of the resources that I have found to be really helpful and enlightening is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, it's a great one.
And I'm not, suggesting that you read this book and I think you read it and you take from it what resonates with you the most. But I think a really interesting takeaway that, that I've got after reading that book is kind of that idea of that your thoughts are not, kind of don't take your thoughts so seriously.
Yes.
Kind of think about your mind. Like, I love the idea of like your monkey mind, in the sense that like your mind is going to do what it does. And you're going to have thoughts that aren't nice.
Yep.
And I don't exactly know why that is, but it is. It's a fact. And
Right.
I think we can all recognize that it's a fact, because you've been sitting there sometimes and all of a sudden you'll have this random thought, or someone will walk by and you'll have kind of a mean thought. And you'll think to yourself, why would I think that? Right?
Yes.
And I think one of the takeaways from a book like The Power of Now, which basically tells you that you are separate from those thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have to take them so seriously, is that instead of having more conversations with yourself, if you wake up and you think to yourself, oh my God, I look bad today, or whatever your thought is, I am picking on that one because it just comes to mind. Instead of having another conversation with yourself about how, oh, I can't believe that. Why would I think that way? And like going on about it, like you said,
Yeah.
you could kind of,
You can shift it.
yeah. So instead of engaging more, you could just accept that and just observe that thought and just be like, all right, and then move on.
Exactly. And
Thank
choose
you
to
for
move on.
sharing.
Right, exactly.
Monkey
Like
mind.
another favorite teacher of mine, if we're talking teachers, is Gabrielle Bernstein, and she's taught me so much. And she's got some great books like Spirit Junkie or Add More Ing to Your Life or Miracles Now. But she's one of my favorite teachers. But she always says, when a judgment comes up, and so that's, self judgment is what we're talking about right now. You thank it, and then you say, thank you for showing me something I still need to heal. It's like something I still need to work on in myself. Thank you so much. And that's it. Like, we appreciate it. Okay. So there it is. Thank you. And then that the thanking of it, the recognizing of it actually lets it dissipate, versus the feeding into it. Like, oh, and then you didn't do this and you didn't do that. And, you're a piece of crap. And, then we can go exactly like really far down. So just catching yourself and again, just being kind to yourself, it's very important.
Yeah, and I think that the overall message is kind of trying to get to the place where you're kind of at peace
Mm-hmm.
with yourself, at peace with
Where
the
you are.
process, with
Yeah.
where you are. If you're finding that you thought that it would be a lot easier, you thought that oh, I see all my friends getting pregnant. Why am I not getting pregnant right
Right.
away? And you thought that the process would be different than it is, and that's causing you a lot of frustration. It can be helpful because that's causing you stress, and it can be helpful to find a way to find peace. That's all it is, and to try to find joy. And I really liked one of the things you said earlier, in terms of when women are in this process of trying to get pregnant, and it's not going the way that they thought or as quickly. They often kind of forget everything that they were doing in a way, and just focus only on that, and really not
Yes.
having anything else happening. And you gave an example of someone finding music again if they really liked music,
Mm-hmm.
or so. Connecting to joy is another thing. Finding, kind of using that time that you're being still, and really connecting with yourself, and trying to remember what made you happy. Even if you have to go back to childhood, what did you like to do? What was
Yep.
something that made you happy? And try to find a way to incorporate something for yourself, just to connect with that joy. I mean, it's amazing how powerful connecting with a simple thing that brought you joy, what a profound impact it can have on your life.
Oh, it's tremendous. And until you do it, you don't realize it. So And a lot of people say, well, I don't have the time. I can't find the time. And it's like, no, you have the time. Like I always say this, if people can go outside and have a cigarette during work, you can go to the bathroom stall and sit on the stall a little bit longer and take a couple deep breaths in for 2 minutes. You can do that. Or you could go outside for 2 minutes. You have the time. You can listen to something more positive and uplifting in the car on your drive to work, or no radio at all. You can choose not to turn on TV when you come home and just for 10 minutes, just kind of sit and be with yourself. There are places to find the time, and you are worthy of finding the time. That's the biggest thing. You're worthy of taking care of yourself. You really are.
Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be a big thing. So
No.
if you did dance classes when you were, it doesn't mean you have to go and like take commit to 12 weeks of yoga. Like, it doesn't have to look like that, but
it doesn't have to be that big, right?
Yeah, like it could even just be, if you really, that's just another example, but if you really loved dancing or something, or you really loved yoga, when you get up in the morning, just do literally like a 2-minute stretch and a couple deep breaths. You can make it fit into your life instead of adding something to it. So I like throwing these types of suggestions out because I feel like there's always this push to add all this more stuff in your life, and everything has to take a long time. And I've listened to Deepak Chopra as well, and he meditates for like 2 hours twice a day. Like, that's not happening for me. There's no way.
He's crazy, and he'll admit it. Like, he's just like, not everybody has what I have, like time-wise. But for him, this is how, like, look at how freaking productive that man is. He's written like over 100 books in like 30 years. I mean, it's crazy. But that's because, and he believes meditation buys him more time in life, and it fights his aging process, and I don't disagree. But yes, you don't have to do that. Just take a couple minutes for yourself. That's it, and then that couple minutes might grow because you might notice how good you feel from it. But start small. There's also some great online guided meditations you could listen to that are free on YouTube. So this doesn't have to cost any money either, you just taking time for you and tuning into that conversation. Those things are free and don't take a lot of work. We just have to choose to be more present.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're getting towards the end of our time together. So to kind of wrap up what we're talking about for the women listening, then, was there anything you wanted to say to kind of tie it all together in terms of how important the emotional aspect is on our fertility and why we should actually pay attention to it?
Well, I think go back to that same statement I was saying, that our thoughts dictate our behavior and our behavior dictates our health and our fertility. And so to stay in that space of, are my actions every day supporting my health and my fertility? If I know my fertility is an extension of my health, then to start tuning into your daily actions and how are they supporting you on that path. And from there, you'll start to see the changes that feel better for you to make, and not everything I talk about or anyone else talks about may resonate with you, but some things, take the little nuggets that do. And again, if you are having challenges with getting pregnant and you are in that space of being very hard on yourself, to tune into that and say to yourself, well, how could I shift that some then? I could afford to be a little nicer to myself. Like, we probably all can say that. So even if you just start there and realize that, a kinder, happier body is just a more hospitable one. And if you want to welcome a happy little baby into your life, the first place to start is you want to make that child's palace pretty happy and luscious and healthy.
Mm-hmm. Well, a few final questions to wrap up our show today.
Sure.
What would you say is the biggest myth about fertility that you'd like to see corrected?
That our age has anything to do with it. There's even science out there to support this. I'm not some crazy person. But fertility does not rapidly decline after the age of 35. My cutoff personally in the practice is about 45, 46, where I start to see a decline in fertility, if you will. But again, there's research that shows a slight decline in fertility over the age of 35. So I think it's something like 86% of women below the age of 35 will get pregnant after 1 year of trying. And then over the age of 35 to 40, it's about 78 to 80% of women will get pregnant after 1 year of trying. So the current medical belief is that 1 in 3 women, so that's 33%, will get pregnant, or 1 in 3, sorry, so it's 66% of women will get pregnant after 1 year of trying after the age of 35. So the percentage point is they're off by about 15 to 20 percentage points. So to just realize that age does not impact fertility as much as your doctors would like you to believe. Another thing is that if there's low ovarian reserve, that does not mean there's poor egg quality. That's another scientifically proven fact, that just because there's not a lot of eggs left does not mean they're poor quality. They are not, one does not reflect upon the other. They are independent of one another. So you can do a lot to improve the quality of your eggs, even if you don't have a ton left. And that when they say low ovarian reserve, we're still talking about a couple hundred to a couple thousand eggs. We're not talking about 2, so to just keep that in mind. Because girls will really go down the rabbit hole on that stuff, and it's my job to talk you out of it. But the science does not support that our fertility rapidly declines. It does decline with age. I'm not denying that. However, it more likely declines with how we treat our bodies, right? So remember, epigenetics, we can influence our genes and we can change the health of our cells. And so you can actually, in 2 years from now, cellularly be younger than you are right now.
Well, I might have to have you back on the show to get into that more, because
gladly.
I have done shows on age, so I've had kind of differing thoughts on that. So I like exploring different perspectives. And now so this is episode number 76.
Wow.
So after having done this many interviews, I think it'd be a really interesting conversation to have, because whereas at the beginning of the podcast, I did an interview with Dr. Mel McDowell. And based on her research, she talked a lot about the decline and how it was real and how women needed to know. And I think there's validity to that, because when you're 50, you may not be able to get pregnant. But with that being said, I think there's so much of emphasis on this, again, biological determination piece, whereas it makes us feel like we don't have any ability to
control it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's going to be super interesting at some point to delve into. So second last question of the day then. I guess I'll end on this question. This is my favorite question to ask. For a woman who's currently on the pill and doesn't want to get pregnant now, but is thinking about it within the next 2 to 3 years, what advice, if any, would you give to her?
To go off at least 6 to 9 months before you want to start trying. Sooner if you feel responsible enough. And to look at this whole process as a preconception process. So it's not just to flip a switch and get pregnant, which happens for a lot of women, but that you want to start feeding your body really nutrient-dense food. So go back to the Thomas Cowan episode that Lisa had and just follow everything he says, because that's what I say. But eat lots of fat and lots of protein. Don't be a vegan. Don't be a vegetarian. You can have vegetarian days, but that's it. But to start to treat your body, right? Like you're preparing for it to host a life, because that is what you're doing. And so go off the pill for sure 6 to 9 months before. Start tracking ovulation. Start looking for healthy signs of ovulation like cervical mucus. And another really big thing is when you start trying to conceive is that just get in the habit of having sex every week, a couple times a week, and don't pay so much attention to your fertile times, because regular sex seems to improve your fertility. There's science behind that too. It seems to regulate the immune system in a way that it's more hospitable to fertility. And so what we often see with women who are trying to get pregnant is they only have sex around ovulation. And that not only screws up their relationship, but it doesn't seem to benefit their bodies and its fertility. Mm-hmm. So to just, realize that you're just preparing your body for a very big mission. And so it's almost like training for a marathon. You want to really get in the habit of this preconception planning and just let that bleed right into conception and pregnancy, and it becomes a lifestyle. So treat your body like the palace that it is.
Mm-hmm. I just love that. And I love also if you're thinking about, having sex every week, then it means you're having sex at times when you can't get pregnant.
Exactly. And that
then
is
you
really
can just enjoy
nice.
it.
Exactly. You can enjoy it. And you know what? Your partner then doesn't feel like a sperm donor. Like these poor men. I mean, I treat so many women and my heart goes out to them when they're struggling. But your partners are really having a hard time with this. They want nothing more than to provide for you and to give you that baby. That's like what they're basically, we're born to make babies and they're born to help us make babies. They're born to give us the sperm to do that. And when they start to feel like just a sperm donor, it really shuts them down emotionally too. So, having regular sex is good on so many levels, but the intimate aspect is really important to keep your relationship in check. And I always say babies are made out of love. I don't want babies made out of forced timed ovulation. And even if you're going through like IVF or IUI and there's forced time ovulation, you can still have a lot of love with your partner. So, to keep that in mind. Okay.
Oh, those are amazing words to end on. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Aimee. It was a great conversation, and I know I could talk with you for hours, obviously. So for our listeners, how can they find out more about you, your books? Where can they go to work with you if they want to work with you?
So everything can be found on my website, which is aimeeraupp.com. AIMEERAUPP.com. You can check out my latest book, Yes, You Can Get Pregnant. It's on sale on Amazon. And that has my whole protocol in there for rejuvenating your fertility. I do offer online coaching, one-on-one and group fertility coaching. Women who are in groups get pregnant twice as fast as women who are not. So group support is really important in this process. And I do that via online video chat, so you can be anywhere in the world. And yeah, I have more books coming out. There's a cookbook. I'm working on an autoimmune book. So just if you go to my website, then you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all of those things. And I'm here to help and serve however I can. So reach out if you have any questions.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks again, Aimee. It was so great talking with you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend. You'll find the show notes page for today's episode at fertilityfriday.com/76. If you've been enjoying the podcast, please do look for it on iTunes and leave a 5-star review so that more people can find it. And make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com to join my email list. And if you have an idea for a podcast episode or a guest suggestion, please send me an email at info@fertilityfriday.com. I love hearing from you, and I've been getting so many great suggestions for podcast episodes. So keep them coming. And remember, you don't have to figure it all out yourself. I absolutely love helping women to connect with their cycles, and I can't wait to delve in with you and help you bring your cycles back to health. So if you'd like to work with me, head over to fertilityfriday.com/coaching, or just click on the Work With Me button on my website to set up your free 15-minute consultation with me. So thanks again for hanging out with me today. I do appreciate all of you for taking the time to tune into the podcast and letting me be part of your day, whether you're on the go or in the car commuting to work. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And as always, until next time, be well and happy charting.